Now you're in there differently than you were before. Oh my God.
Live. Good. Okay. Let's see. Welcome back, everybody. Tracy, can you hear me? If so, raise your hand. Your physical hand. Perfect. Fantastic. I'm so sorry, everybody, for what's happened here. And I think we've solved the technical problems by resetting the meeting. So the good news is we have almost exactly the same number of people as we did before we reset. So only a few people didn't log back on. So I appreciate everybody going through that extra step, and obviously not something that any one of us wanted to have to go through. So welcome especially to select board members who got boxed out the first time. So I'll just do a quick little recap of my introduction here, which I now can't find in front of me, so I'll just give a quick wing of it. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is twofold. One is to hear from school board and select board about their budgets and have a chance to ask questions about that. And then also to hear from candidates for local office and to have time to ask them questions. So what's coming up now is the select board presentation of the budget, which will be done by the town manager. There's going to be 35 minutes for this section. And ideally we'll have time for questions within that 35 minutes. If for some reason we don't get to all the questions, we can ask more questions after we hear from the candidates. So the end of the evening is sort of an open time. You can ask candidate questions, you can ask budget questions, whichever you like. So, and one thing I also mentioned earlier, which I'll mention again, is I'm sure people have questions about other things, not necessarily the budget or the candidates. And the best time for those questions will be on Saturday. So our agenda for Saturday, which is Town and School Meeting Day, is relatively light because many of the questions that we often take up at that meeting are going to be on the ballot on Tuesday instead. So if you have other questions not related to budget or candidates, hold those, and we'll have plenty of time with both boards to get into that on Saturday. So that's kind of where we are. So we're going to start a 35-minute period here, presentation of the town budget with a chance for some Q&A. So I think that covers the main details. Once again, I'm so sorry that we had to go through these glitches, but I think everything's looking good right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, our town manager, to start the budget presentation. So Tracy, take it away.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I'm going to go ahead and let that settle in a little bit. No?
Looks like we can see.
Okay, it's not showing me, but that's okay. We'll just dance a little bit of a funky dance. There we go.
Nice.
All right. First off, thank you, Chuck, and thank you to CATV, and a big shout out to Chico, who ran up here with another laptop, hoping that was the problem. So Chico, come by, and I'll give you your laptop back at some point, along with the cord. So many thanks to everybody. I hope you're all tuning in tonight on Zoom, YouTube, or channel 1085. My next thank yous go to the town staff. Town staff do a lot, some of which residents and other community at some point, along with the cord. So many thanks to everybody. I hope you're all tuning in tonight on Zoom, YouTube, or channel 1085. My next thank yous go to the town staff.
Is that me?
Town staff do a lot.
Working on it, Tracy.
Residents and other community complaints, along with the board. So many thanks to everybody. I hope you're all tuning in tonight on Zoom, YouTube, or channel 1085. My next thank yous go to the town staff. Is that me? Town staff do a lot.
Working on it, Tracy.
Residents and
We're
other community complaints, along with the board. So many thanks to everybody. I hope you're all tuning in tonight on Zoom, YouTube, or channel 1085. My next thank yous go to the town staff. Is that me? Town staff do a lot.
That echo loop. So let's just hold for a second here. Maybe we solved one problem and created a new one. The good news is we do have 78 people still with us, so hang on, folks. Yeah, I think she's on multiple computers, so I can go up there too. That echo loop. Yeah. So let's just hold for a second here. Maybe we solved one problem and created a new one. The good news is we do have 78 people still with us, so hang on, folks. So let's just hold for a second here. Maybe we solved one problem and created a new one. The good news is we do have 78 people still with us, so. We're back on. Okay, I'm just going to hold here for a second, make sure that the looping isn't happening right here in this room. It seems like all of our entire lives, AV is always a challenge. Like when I was a kid, it was film strips in school that would break, and now we're dealing with high-tech web stuff. So hold here for a second, make sure that the looping isn't happening right here in this room. It seems like all of our entire lives, AV is always. I thought I just heard it loop on my little check there. Tracy, can you hear me? If you can, raise your physical hand. Okay. Kim or Lanny, can you guys hear me? You both, okay. Okay, so the sound is now live. I thought I just heard it loop on my little check there. Tracy, can you hear me? If you can, raise your physical hand. Okay. Kim or Lanny, can you guys hear me? Okay, okay, so the sound is now live. I thought I just heard it on my little check there.
Chuck,
Tracy, can you hear me? If
would it work if Tracy would come downstairs?
Kim or Lanny, can you guys hear me? Okay, okay, so the sound is now live. I'm off.
Oh, sad.
On my little check there. Tracy, can you hear me? If you can, Tracy, Kim or Lanny, can you guys hear me? Okay, okay, so the sound is now live. I'm off. Oh, you said. Yeah, panelist again.
Well, no, you're talking through the house system.
Yeah. Check. Yep. Check.
Great. And so now can you ask Tracy to present?
I think I'm. Tracy, can you hear me? Yeah. Panelist again.
Well, no, you're talking through the house system.
Check. Yep. Check.
Great. So now you're ask
I think I'm. Tracy, can you hear me? Yeah. Panelist again.
Well,
I think it's good now. I think it is. The last thing that was just closed, it just silenced it.
okay, let's try talking again.
Check.
We'll have to give it a few seconds.
Yeah, we give it a few seconds here. Okay. Can you make me a panelist again? That's your. Great.
All right.
Okay. We may have it. Tracy, can you start your video again? Awesome. Can you hear me? Okay, this is really me asking you.
What happens if I talk, Chuck?
We think we may have it. The thumbs are up. So Tracy, so sorry. Let's see if we get you to share your screen and we'll roll this again.
Once more with sound. Let's see.
Great. You're all set, Tracy. Looks good.
Great. Thank you, Chuck, so much. We're going to start over from the beginning. Chuck, you are the chillest guy in Hartford right now with tech difficulties. So thank you so much. I want to send out my thank yous before I start this presentation to my amazing town staff. Some of you see them, some of which you don't see them regularly, but we do it all here at the town of Hartford. And so I just wanted to take a minute, thank my internal departments, human resources, finance, information technology, and my staff. Most of you know Lana, but we also have Dana, our environmental sustainability coordinator. These are the departments that work to ensure the town runs efficiently and effectively, maintains controls over data and information, and maintains compliance with state and federal regulations. Some of our departments do all that, and they have a public facing component, our assessors, planning development, and the town clerk. You might never need them, but they process a lot of required forms and transactions, from marriage license to your property valuation. And then there's the people that you see each and every day, our amazing Parks and Rec department that keeps the programs flowing and the parks fresh. Our fire department that provides a broad range and deep level of response, from medical emergencies to swift water rescue. Our police department is a regional leader in our public safety dispatching and our commitment to de-escalation and community policing and public works. They not only make sure our roads are safe, but our waste and water are too. This is where we started with fiscal year 2022. That's the fiscal year we're in currently. We're going to finish that up on June 30th, 2022. This budget only had minor increases over fiscal year 2021, and we also accounted for a reduction in non-tax revenue. Here's your proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. You'll see that this is a proposed tax rate as well. The town sets the final tax rate once the grand list is finalized, and the state provides certain numbers to us. You heard Russ talk a little bit about how the state works with them as well. We set the final rate in July, just around the 4th of July. And last year we saw a slight reduction from the proposed rate, something like a fraction of a cent, when this actually all shook out. We provide this number to you in per $100 of value because it's the most accurate, but I get that it is really difficult to think about that. You need to do some math on the back of an envelope. Where this all shakes out to is a tax rate rise of 1.69 cents to 1.0453 per $100 of value on your property. That's a 1.64% increase over what we saw last year. The general fund budget includes a reappropriation of the unassigned fund balance of $1 million. That leaves us about $2.9 million currently in the unassigned fund. While we calculate the full budget and document requests from the community social service appropriation, you vote on those separately. So this 18,253,944 that you see here and that you see in your ballot, this does not include social service appropriations of almost $225,000. We take those into account when we do all of this math, and then we pull them back out for you in order to do the warrant language. And this is how we're required to do it. We know that historically the town does deeply support our social service appropriations. So it's a strong practice for us to make sure that we account for the fact that these typically pass and pass by wide margins. This year, we're anticipating an almost 4% increase in non-tax revenue. Last year, we saw almost a 4% decrease that we anticipated. We're seeing that increase on the other side. Part of what COVID has showed us is that you all love to use your parks. you are engaging with our Parks and Rec programs at a higher level, and that includes WABA and the other special events that they put on there. And you're also using more of our fees for service, whether that's through the town clerk's office, through planning and development, or some of the things that Public Works does for you. So we also know that we have a pool coming on. So we anticipated that we're going to get some of your money when you come to our new pool here this summer, and increased our non-tax revenue by about $100,000. That is always a little bit of a guess because we're actually putting forth a guesstimate on our revenue based on historic trends. Not necessarily do we get to see what the future brings next year and what you all give us for non-tax revenue. Here's the last 4 years of tax rates, as well as the fiscal year 2023 proposed rate. You'll see that this is not the lowest, but one of the lowest in the last 4 years. And actually some of our bigger years was about 2015 and 2016. I've dropped those off because it can sometimes be hard to look at all of these numbers all at once. Again, we're going to set this final tax rate in July once the grand list is finalized, usually right around July 4th. And last year we did see a small reduction when we finalized the grand list. This proposed increase for a house valued at $250,000 is about $43.50. That gives you a baseline. It depends on what the valuation of your house is. If you don't know that, you can always check your tax bill, or you can give the assessor a call and get some information on your house. Hartford voters will also be weighing in on how the town allocates its local option tax. The local option tax was approved by Hartford voters in 2016. It levies a 1% tax on rooms, meals, and alcohol sales in the town. It's not a straight sales tax. Only those 3 items get this 1% local option tax. And the use of the funds is required to be voted upon every year. We again estimate this based on historic trends and information that we get from the state of Vermont. So we think we have a good thing going here. We always run a little conservative, but again, this is fluctuated with those great times. And then also COVID did see a little downturn in this as we saw less people coming to Hartford, staying, eating out, and buying alcohol. We've proposed this year that we use our local option tax funds for our 4 of the 5 active cemeteries in town. You'll see that what is known as the Christian Street Cemetery is no longer there. The town took that over as of July 1st, 2021. And so we no longer allocate to them in this way. We've absorbed them into our operating budget. Most of the operating budgets for these cemeteries are managed by boards and come from this local option tax. So this is the majority of their operating budget for maintenance, infrastructure needs, repairs, things of that nature. We're also proposing to allocate $200,000 of the local option tax for the purchase of a new ambulance. We have 3 ambulances altogether, and as they reach the end of their useful life, we purchase another and we sell the oldest one with the most years of service in it. So it's time to retire that oldest ambulance and buy ourselves a new ambulance. We do end up using both of the ambulances that are the 1 and 2 ambulance quite frequently. And that 3rd ambulance means that if we have an issue with one of our ambulances, we're still able to provide emergency services to you. Staff are actually actively investigating if we can turn this ambulance into a hybrid ambulance. And that's something that the fire chief is working with the environmental sustainability coordinator on. This $200,000 will get us 2/3 of the way towards an ambulance. We have another $100,000 in reserve for it. Where are we going with the budget this year? This year, we have now completed our first year of looking at Hartford Fire Station number 2. This budget is going to get us 4 new firefighters to fully staff Station 2. Right now, it's staffed about 60% of the time, and we are relying on overtime. Station 2 predominantly serves Quechee and West Hartford, and we're seeing a significant reduction in response time. A smaller thing, but something that I think people have been asking for is a speed cart with messaging. We have one speed cart, which very clearly tells people what the speed limit is and how fast they're going over the speed limit. This new speed cart would be a second cart to be able to deploy, and it would also have messaging. So for example, if we ever had a street that was closed due to an issue, when we had that microburst in Quechee this summer and we needed to warn people that some of those roads were impassable, we could use something like this to let people know that roads were closed or there was a hazard ahead. We are starting to do some work internally to have capacity to build public portals for documents and cemetery records. So instead of coming in and rifling through paper or asking someone to email you, we are going to be beginning these processes. So you could go to hartford-vt.org and look up a variety of documents and records on your own time whenever you feel like it. We have heard a lot that folks would like more public works capacity. So we are adding 2 new highway equipment operators. These are the folks you see in the plow trucks, and these are the folks you see doing road repair in the summertime. We anticipate decrease the amount of time to do one pass. We'll talk about plowing since that's on the front of our minds these days. So we'll be able to plow routes quicker. And in the summertime, we'll be able to have an additional crew out there. This also includes 2 part-time seasonal beautification folks. These would be entry-level positions. We would have them painting curbs, hydrants, pulling weeds, doing anything that makes the villages look a little bit better. The town knows that we are not at the top of our game when it comes to cybersecurity. So we are adding a entry-level help desk individual in our IT department. So that way our IT director can ensure that we are keeping everyone's data safe and that we are properly securing everything against phishing scams and other cyber attacks. We're adding a public safety mechanic. We are definitely understaffed in that area, and it often leads us to have to make difficult decisions with our equipment and who gets the attention of our current mechanic. So police and fire are sharing that cost, and this position will focus on our police and fire vehicles, which are very, very specialty vehicles. We have some new initiatives and some new folks that are going to be working with us around data management and internal controls, very similar to cybersecurity, but we want to make sure that we are reducing our use of paper, we're reducing our inefficient processes, and we're making it so it's easier for people to get what they need, both staff and community stakeholders. And we're also upgrading some equipment for parks. We're getting some new mowers, and we got them a trailer so that way they last longer. That's it for me, except for I want to say, here's some of the ways you can keep in touch, hartford-vt.org. We have a new site coming spring 2022. Last I heard, about 6 to 8 weeks, so we're excited about that. We have a Facebook page, Hartford TH, and you can always join the listserv with the Vital Communities platform, and thanks to Vital Communities for hosting that for us. That's it for me. Back to you, Chuck.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tracy. Good. We've got another about 15 minutes or so here for additional questions. So if you've got a question, raise your hand on Zoom, and I'll call on people in the order that I see them come on up. It does seem like there's been a little bit of a delay in terms of how long it takes for me to see it and how long it takes for me to unmute, or for people to unmute. So we'll give a little bit of a pause for people to get organized. Just as a matter of course, here we have about 82 people in the meeting right now, just so everybody has a sense of what's going on. And we also have members of the select board here. who could potentially answer questions depending on where they're directed. So first question this evening is Jeff Arnold. Jeff, go ahead and unmute. I'm sorry, I should say one more thing that I wasn't clear about. When you unmute, tell us your name, since I may not know it from what I see on the screen, and also just tell us where you live, since it's relevant for town meeting if you're a resident of the town or not. So when you get started, do that. So Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff Arnold from Wilder, Vermont. Tracy, I have a question about the full-time mechanic. How many is mainly going to serve the police department and the fire department? One question is he going to work on the fire engines? And how many total vehicles will he be working on? Because I can't imagine, even if we had 30 vehicles, that would keep one person busy all year long for, I don't know, salary of 80K.
Hey, Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, so Jeff, we'll be looking at this job description will be written to ensure that anyone that fills this position will be certified in emergency vehicles. So that will be everything from the ladder truck all the way down to the speed cart at the police department. I want to say with a caveat, if something's under warranty, we are kind of required to go to that warranty holder first and ensure that we maintain that warranty. So there could be little moments where we're sending a vehicle out solely because it's on warranty. You know, it really depends on how many vehicles we have, but we do have a pretty hefty maintenance schedule, especially on these types of vehicles. So the regular maintenance on pursuit vehicles, checking on brakes, making sure tires are working, and then checking the entirety of the system on those fire engines and trucks and ambulances actually takes up a significant portion of time because we have to maintain them in pristine working order. So it's not just about failures, it's about this pretty hefty regular a maintenance schedule that goes into dealing with these vehicles.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Next question I have is someone named Mike. Mike, if that's you, go ahead and unmute and tell us your name and where you live.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Mike Morris, Hartford. Question I have is our budget last year was 17,600,000. The new budget is 18,253,000, $600,000 difference. Taking $1 million out of the unassigned fund balance, throwing it towards the 18 million. Why are taxes not going down instead of up?
Who wants to speak to that? Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Mike. I was definitely a proponent of, over the years, it's been a recommended practice to keep the unassigned fund balance between 5 and 10%, and ours has been upwards of approaching 18, 19%. And so I had made the recommendation to increase the amount that we're using from the unassigned fund balance. And I mean, I think Tracy just sort of outlined a lot of the additions. I mean, we know there are a number of additional staff members that are coming on this year that I personally feel are long overdue. And I think that that was a part of the way to address it.
I think you misunderstood my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The budget last year was 17,600,000.
Mm-hmm.
This year, they're proposing 18,200,000. That's a $600,000 increase.
Right.
Now we're taking $1 million out of the unassigned fund balance. It should reduce our total taxable amount, not
True, but
increase it.
we did take, I don't remember the exact amount, but I think it was along the lines of 700,000 out of the unassigned fund balance last year as well.
So next year, we got to make up $1 million is what you're saying.
Potentially, yeah,
okay.
That's possible. The grand list is increasing as well, which is certainly a contributor to just to the distribution of the tax expenses. As the grand list has increased, that spreads the distribution of the cost of that as well. Does that answer your
I just want to
question?
make sure I understood clearly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I don't have any other hands up at the moment. I'm sure we have 84 people in attendance. So I'm sure someone has a question, and this could be you. Okay, great. I have a name here, Heidi Duto. Heidi, if you're there, go ahead and unmute and tell us your name, where you live.
Hi, my name is Heidi Duto. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're all set. Go ahead.
And I'm from White River Junction. I've been at most of the select board meetings throughout the year, whether I was presently in the meeting or I was on Zoom. And I have been following this budget rather closely. I believe some positions have been left off this presentation tonight, and I would like that to be made for the public to know. I believe in the public works, there was a administrative billing personnel position left off. There was a full-time park and recs department personnel left off. I believe there was an assistant to the human resource director left off. And I also believe that there was a raise to the human resource director of a $10,000 raise left off, which I find rather substantial items left off this budget presentation tonight that I think should be presented to the public. And I was just wondering why these were not in the presentation. Could someone please tell me that?
Okay. Anybody from the board or Tracy who wants to take a crack at that? Yep, Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, Heidi, this is kind of a short presentation, right? We're boiling down hours of conversation to a max of 35 minutes with questions. But you have a really great point. If people are interested, you can always go back and both read and watch all of the meetings. If people want to read the minutes, they're available at hartford-vt.org/agenda center. And our community partner CATV on their YouTube channel keep all of our select board meetings. So again, you know, boiling down hours of robust conversation with the select board into a max of 35 minutes, including questions. And also we're looking at the ballot. So I wanted to make sure that we understood kind of the numbers that were coming through on the warning. And I, you know, felt that the previous town managers and select boards who built this template did a pretty good job of explaining that. So I continue to use it.
Okay, fantastic. Looking for another question, or 84 people out there. Surely there's something that somebody wants to know. Okay, great. My next question is someone named Jerry. If that's you, Jerry, go ahead, unmute, tell us your full name, where you live.
My name is Jerry Williams, and I live in Wilder. And
Great,
I would
thanks.
like to know the total cost of the new positions that are added into this budget, including benefits, because this is a cost that will be added to this year's budget and for the next how many years to come. So I want to know what that cost actually is. And I do want to know more about one of the town employees getting a $10,000 raise and an assistant to that person. Would someone explain the rationale for that, please?
Okay, we got two questions on the table. Who wants to step up, board members or Tracy?
Oh, I'm happy to keep answering, but Chuck, can you prompt me with that first question just so I can separate them the same way you did?
Sure, yeah. First question is the total cost of new positions with benefits. And then the second would be talking about the details of the one particular position. Okay.
So Jerry, we did that work on the 17th of January, and the minutes don't look to have that in there in a very robust way, but the agenda does have that information. I would have to do a lot of math for you to do all of that work. But again, if you want to go to the Agenda Center and look through each of the additional costs for the new positions, including benefits, are included in that presentation. And so, that math is available for you as well. Chuck, the second question was about a person. Do we, again, I don't think it's necessarily great to be talking about people. We talk about positions. And so for this, it's not a $10,000 increase in that way, but we are re-looking at that role. As you know, we have over 120 staff members, and we now have quite a significant risk and liability portfolio. We work really extensively with VLCT, who's our insurance carrier, workers' comp, and things like that. So that position, which once upon a time was a very small position, is continuing to grow and change. So we're moving that in line with basically current competition and going rates. Nobody has any assistance here, not even me. Nobody gets me coffee. Nobody makes my lunch reservations. And my admin in the department, Lana, occasionally makes meetings for me if I ask her to. So it's not an assistant. Every position here has a specific portfolio of work. And right now we need to reimagine how we do work in HR. Again, over 120 staff members, full-time, part-time. We have seasonal staff members who provide summer camp work with our campers in our Parks and Rec department. And we need somebody to come in for a few hours a week and process all of that paperwork completely and timely. That's onboarding, offboarding, when someone has a baby, adding that baby to their insurance, when someone gets married, putting them on or taking them off of their insurance, processing their retirement. And then there's a lot of general letters that need to go out and information around benefits. So that's a part-time position. If this budget passes, if folks are interested, it's a 15-hour a week up to position for someone who is really good with paperwork and can make sure that the town is doing everything they need to do to stay on the up and up with human resources requirements.
Okay, great. Thanks for that question, Jerry. Next question I have on my screen here, FX Flynn. FX, go ahead, unmute and tell us your full name, where you live.
Okay, my full name is Francis Xavier Flynn, but everybody knows me as FX. And I live in Quechee. And I want to applaud the select board and Tracy and her staff of 120 in town for coming up with a budget that I think is going to significantly increase the professionalization of the management of our municipality. And I'm very heartened that the unassigned fund balance is not going to be kept at an inordinately high level, which has always tempted town managers and select boards to spend on pet projects. When we run a big surplus, when we have a large amount of money in that particular line item, it's only right that it goes back to the taxpayers in the form of reducing the tax rate for the following year. So all in all, I want to give a big thumbs up to the work that you all did this year. I know it's a tough task to get through all that, that there is a lot of detail. There's a lot of things to pay attention to. There are many things that require a great deal of homework to understand. And again, I really like the direction that we're going in, and I wanted to express my appreciation and thanks.
Okay, thanks, FX. Waiting for the next question here. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes still to go in this section. We can move on if needed, but it looks like I do have a question here, or someone wants to speak. Okay, Kim, go ahead.
Thanks, Chuck. I I also just want to acknowledge that I'm about to finish up my 4th year on the board. And since even prior to that, it has felt like the human resources of the town of Hartford have been overextended and just under present. And I feel like that this budget and, Tracy's decision on where some of these positions might be added is a long overdue service to the town. And I just want to acknowledge that. I mean, I think that this is some retroactive updating of our town employees that I think will benefit the town staff at large. It will benefit the community at large, and the services that we're able to provide. And so I just want to stand by that and support that as well.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Next question here from our viewing public is from Eric Kraus. Eric, go ahead and unmute and tell us your name, where you live.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're all set.
Okay, Eric Kraus. I live in the town of Hartford. Thanks for shepherding us through this technically challenging evening, Chuck, and thanks to all the presenters for this useful information and allowing us to make informed decisions. I have a question that goes back, that brings us back a few years. Some of you were on the board then and might be able to assist in answering it, but looking back at the 2016 warning, Article 16 established what we now call the local option tax fund. And it reads, shall the town of Hartford establish a capital repair and replacement reserve fund? And that's the sort of the operative phrase I want to highlight. A capital repair and replacement reserve fund, to be known as the town of Hartford Capital Reserve Fund, into which there shall be deposited town room and meals, alcohol, beverages, taxes, net revenues until directed otherwise by vote of the town. So the question I have really is about how we're using the money in that fund and whether it, am I being too literal with the phrasing in that Article 16? Again, it's the 2016 year, March 1, 2016 town meeting, Article 16. Am I being too literal in my interpretation of capital repair and replacement reserve fund and how it's being used for some things? For example, with respect to the cemeteries, certainly there are repairs and replacements, I would imagine, in the money being used. But is all that money, would it all be qualified as part of capital repair and replacements? Just wanted to go back and make sure we're using that fund as was originally intended and as the voters intended it to be used. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Eric. Yeah, someone from the board or Tracy, maybe speak to, I think the town ambulance is a pretty straightforward capital repair and replace, but can someone speak to the cemetery allocations and what those will be used for? Yeah, go ahead.
I can
Kim.
try. I wasn't on the board then, and I was just looking up the language that Eric was referencing, but I haven't pulled it up yet. What my impression of that language is that it was basically to just establish an account to put the local option tax money into, and maybe the terminology wasn't ideal. I guess I probably shouldn't try to answer this question because maybe I don't know the answer. But my understanding has always been that basically the local option tax can be used for anything that the voters approve that it is used for, not that it's limited to capital expenses. Does that sound like it would make sense to you, Tracy or Lanny?
Yeah, I think Lanny probably has a little bit of an understanding about what at least Queechee is going to use their cemetery for. I can say that some of them are looking at removing diseased trees, fixing roads, and water we've got some water lines that are problematic. But Eric, I think I'll just say one thing and then I'll let Lanny talk, but I think that it does kind of warrant a bigger conversation about the lot and about cemetery appropriations that maybe is something that, you know, the board needs to start thinking about, in a few weeks. So, you know, just tabling that as a other thing to deal with, but it definitely, I'm looking at this language and maybe we should get some clarity on that, at least so that way we're all on the same page.
Lanny, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, one of the things, Eric, that to address cemeteries in the town of Hartford is that, as Tracy made note of, we do have the cemetery that we took over on Christian Street, and that is adding more time to staff to deal with that cemetery up there. And eventually, the cemeteries associations in the town of Hartford are basically overwhelmed because there's so much work to do and there's so many people to do it in the town of Hartford. As is well known, volunteerism is down considerably and the cost of maintenance is skyrocketing on anything for gravel or anything to do with roads. And this is actually, in my personal opinion, it's a cost savings to the town of Hartford to appropriate sums to the cemeteries, because if we do not, I personally believe that it's going to happen anyways, I think at some point in time, but I believe the cemeteries are going to be thrown up and they'll end up having to come to the town by law and we will have to take those on. And then it's going to be a considerable lift for the town, meaning we'll have to end up getting probably a cemetery commissioner at some point down the road. And it's more cost effective, I believe, and Tracy can correct me if I'm wrong on this, it's more cost effective right now for us to supply cemetery associations with the monies and let them manage the funds accordingly. Am I correct on that, Tracy?
I think so. I do think we need to probably do a little work making sure that we get all that stuff done, because I would rather have somebody else do it than us try to pick it up in a few years when we do inherit them. We are aware we're going to inherit every active cemetery in town eventually.
Okay, great. So I think I also heard maybe, Tracy, that the question of the capital piece is something that maybe the board and you will investigate based on Eric's question. Okay, we're just about out of time for this section. So what I want to do here is we're going to take about a 2-minute break here. If somebody has a question related to the budget, you can join in again here after the candidates discussion and ask it again. So there's still time to go. But we're going to now just take a couple minutes. Nobody log off, stay where you are. And we're going to promote onto the panel the various candidates. So if you are a candidate and you're part of our meeting right here, we're going to do our best right now to add you to the panel. I believe that's how we do it. Okay, great. In fact, even easier would be if you are a candidate not currently on the panel, raise your hand in Zoom, and then we can see you, and we'll move you on. So take about a minute or two here to get people on, and then we'll move into the candidate part of our program.
Nancy Russell needs to be brought in.
Okay. Excellent. I see Nancy there. Let's see if we can get her on.
There's some people that we can take off. You want to know what that is?
People that we can't see.
Okay.
Okay, those of you who are on the select board or school board who are as presenters, we're going to leave you guys on because we got into trouble last time moving people around. So if you're not a candidate, just go ahead and turn off your video. And that way it won't be quite as distracting, but we'll keep people on as presenters. Okay, looks like we're slowly getting folks on here. We do need Nancy Russell to be added, I think. I see Peter. Okay, we've got Allie. I think I saw Mary's there. Great. Kim is still
There's
with us.
someone named Rocket. They need to be brought in.
Okay. We need Nancy. There's Nancy. Great. Don't see Rocket. I think I saw Doug before. He's not on the roster right now. Okay. Great. Okay. In the event that we don't have somebody, when we get to that candidate, I'll just ask and to verify that someone is not waiting in the wings here. Okay, great. So this is the third part of the program tonight, which is the chance for us to hear from each of our candidates for local office. So the way it's going to work is we're going to go right on down and hear from all the candidates, and then we'll open up the Q&A. So that's how we'll work it. Each candidate's going to have up to 4 minutes to speak, and so I'll keep track of the clock there so we can kind of stay on track. Once we get through everybody, then we'll open up for questions, and we'll try to move through as many folks as we can. So we still have 80 people in the meeting right now, which is fantastic. So given all the technical difficulties we had, I'm going to add 15 minutes on at the end if we need it. So we'll run this portion of the program until either 10:15 or if we get down below 28 people. So we've got plenty of time here, almost an hour and a half. And so I hope we have a chance for everybody who wants to speak to be heard. Okay, so I'm just going to take these in order since the seats are uncontested on the ballot. And so I'm just going to go right down the list here and see who wants to say a few words. So first on my list is two-year candidate for the school board, Nancy Russell. So Nancy, go ahead and unmute and you're on.
Hey, thank you very much. Well, I think most everybody knows me because I seem to have my face all over town for some reason. And I am running again for the school board and for the another two-year term. I'm not quite sure what else to tell you. I do have a great interest in making sure that we're preserving and improving the quality of our schools here in Hartford. I think we're doing a great job now, but I think that as anything that is great can be greater. And I want us to be the greatest. So I serve on a lot of other different boards and committees that relate to the school district. I serve on the board of directors for the Vermont State School Board Association now. Some of the social equity caucuses, a couple of are we now? Oh, nope. I'm very, I am the chairman of the board for the Hartford Community Coalition, which are, if you've been in Hartford, you know that we do a ton of work for the families and especially for the children that are here in Hartford. So I think that's enough I could say about myself. If anybody has any questions, great. Or if not, I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, we'll hold any questions till the end. So if you have questions for Nancy, hold for those. Okay, our next position is a 3-year candidate for the school board. And we have Peter Merrill. Peter, take it away.
Hello. As is clear, I am the candidate for the currently open 3-year position for the school board. I have been serving on the school board since my daughter was in 1st grade and she is now a graduating senior. So it's been a while. The fact that I am the candidate for the 3-year position turns out to be a bit of an embarrassing subject. So in full candor, those of you who pay attention to the school board meetings may remember that a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation about how difficult it is to keep track of whose term is up and whose isn't and how long they're for. Having a combination of 3-year and 2-year terms, it shifts constantly who's up on a given year. Well, this year that bit us. We asked that the superintendent put in place on our school board webpage when each of our terms started and ended so that the public would be aware of that. And in fact, we could go reference that ourselves. Embarrassingly enough, when he did that, he discovered that this year was only the second year of my existing 3-year term, and that the person who should be running and again to renew their term is Coach Christie. This presented a bit of a problem since we discovered this well after the ballot process had closed and we didn't have a chance to correct it. We then consulted with the town clerk, through the town clerk, with the Secretary of State's office, and with the district's law firm to figure out what choices we had. And interestingly enough, they all came back with exactly the same advice. So that is the advice we're going to follow. The advice they gave us was that since I am legally and in all ways properly running for the 3-year term, if I get elected for the 3-year term, I should stay in that 3-year term. But since I cannot also be in 2 terms at once, I should immediately then resign from the remainder of my 3-year term, that one last year term. And the school board should then do what it always does when there is a vacancy, immediately choose to elect somebody to fill out the remainder of that term. And I will, when I am elected, if I am elected after this announcement, immediately propose that Coach Christie become the person who fills out that remaining 1-year term. This will more or less return us to where we should have been, i.e. with Coach having a chance to run for re-election, and we will have effectively just switched our places on the ballot in which 3-year term we are filling. So that announcement is the drama for the evening, other than our sound issues.
Great, Peter. Thank you for that. And thank you for consulting with legal counsel prior to the election, which will make this easier to take from here. So that's great. Okay, that's Peter for the 3-year candidate for school board. The next position is town and school moderator, which is me. And I am up for election every year, including this year. So I have no speech to provide other than a promise to try to improve my AV skills should you re-elect me. And also the hope that we won't need AV skills like this a year from now. So that's what I have for mine. I'm going to turn now to the select board seats. We have 2 candidates running for 2-year seats on the select board, and it's vote for 2. So you'll be hearing from 2 people here potentially, and essentially they're running unopposed since it's 2 people running for 2 seats. The first person on my list is Rocket, and I didn't see that Rocket was on our list here.
He's on now, Chuck.
He's on now. Fantastic. So let's see. Do we have him on as a presenter? I don't see him yet as a presenter. Here we go. Okay, Rocket, you are our next speaker here. You've got 4 minutes. Go ahead and unmute and take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on here. Try to keep this really brief. I'm very new to town. I moved to Hartford in August of this past year to attend Vermont Law School. So I realized that there's actually a lot of questions and curiosity about me, which is very natural because if I saw an Asian guy, my dad phrased it well. He said, "You have a weird name and you look like a radical monk, and you have a wild name." So I said, "Yeah, I mean, put it that way. I see why people would have a lot of questions about me." To give some context, I was born in California, but I came to Vermont in 2007 to attend the Putney School. I studied economics at Middlebury College, and Vermont law was actually the only law school I applied to because I wanted to stay in state. And so I just moved here from Addison County. So while I'm very new to Hartford and I have a lot to learn about this community, and I've been actually having a really great time meeting people from all over the community the last few weeks during this campaign season, I do have a pretty strong grasp of local politics in Vermont, town governance and so forth. I was drawn to run for the select board because I think it's a great way to get to know people, to know a community. And I feel like it's just a fun and good thing to be involved in civic government. I totally did not expect to run nominally unopposed. So that was surprising to me. But I realized that it kind of puts me and the town in this awkward position where hey, I'm running and people don't really know me. So I guess to summarize, I think the best way to probably answer things, personally, I feel like I'm very much a moderate, pragmatic person. I think that there are a lot of, obviously a huge number of diverse experiences and practices that people have. And I think the tricky thing is like just keeping that the fact in mind that we all have common goals. And so for me, like approaching select board, it's really about learning, listening, and trying to be a contributing member of the community. So if anyone has any specific policy-driven questions, I'm happy to answer those. You can reach me at my email, rocket@vermontlaw.edu, or hope to see you around or on Facebook, wherever really. But I'd be happy to answer that. I just didn't feel like this would be probably the best time to talk about those things specifically. Thank you.
Great, Rocket. Thanks very much. Okay, our second candidate for 2-year seat on the select board is Ali Tufenkjian. Ali, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Ali Tufenkjian, pronounced like a tough engine. I'm running for a 2-year term. And just as I begin, I want to note that the perspectives that I'm going to express here tonight are mine alone and not on behalf of the select board or the town of Hartford. So I am originally from Florida. I've lived here for a little over 2 years in Hartford and have been really honored to serve on the board for the past year. And I was only a few months into living here when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And I felt this desperation really amidst social isolation to be useful, to be purposeful to this community despite being so new. So I got involved with mutual aid efforts, making weekly food deliveries to folks staying in hotels and motels, to an immunocompromised neighbor. And something from that past year that really resonates with me up to this moment was when I would go to the Shady Lawn motel to deliver meals, I would always see the same father and his 2 young sons who were living there. And when I would arrive, they would come right out and we would start chatting. I got to know them a little better. And then after a few months, the father announced that they had finally secured housing in Springfield and would be leaving the motel in a couple of weeks. And so that last week that I saw them before they move, I was able to give them a care package, filled with games and books for the boys. And it was like one of the best days of a really, really painful and exhausting year. And it's those kinds of moments, like these moments when we really see each other, care for each other, that call me to select board work and that I try to keep at the core of everything that I do. So professionally, I am an artist, educator, community engagement professional. As the education and engagement manager at the Hopkins Center for the Arts, I partner with community organizations, schools, families, building opportunities that prompt empathy, critical thinking, and consideration of multiple perspectives. And through teaching in and managing arts, health, social, emotional learning programs for over 10 years, I know how to connect the dots between big picture goals and detailed logistics. And as a member of the steering committee of the Upper Valley chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice, which focuses on anti-racist education and action, I've learned that having hard conversations can actually help heal wounds and bring people together. I've also learned that I have much to learn about approaching all aspects of life from a perspective of equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice. And I love so many things about the town of Hartford, but what I love the most, I think, is how engaged our community is, how folks really show up like tonight to discuss what they care about and why. So from many select board meetings, conversations with community members, some kind of key issue areas have emerged that I hope to keep working on, which include affordable housing and homelessness, of course, addressing local and regional housing shortage by collaborating with our core 4 towns and working with our planning and development department towards more mixed use and residential zoning opportunities, climate action, and staying accountable to those goals set forth in our climate action plan. Equity, diversity, and inclusion, how we can welcome and support more diverse residents in terms of age, race, class, gender, sexuality, ability, and providing more education and training in those areas. Public safety, supporting fire and police departments, of course, but also working on collaboration between other public safety entities like our mental health services, drug prevention organizations, and homeless shelters. And finally, infrastructure and economic development, how we can continue to support really important projects like the South Main Street parking lot improvement, growth and development, while not pushing anyone out and away, particularly from our residential areas. So my 5 core tenets, which you maybe have heard before, are building relationships is everything. Clear communication is key. Listening is about more than just saying, I hear you. It's about showing people that you've heard them through your response and your actions. Humility matters and trust is earned. So I hope to keep incorporating these tenets into my select board work, partnering with community members and town staff to continue to make this a thriving, safe, and beautiful community for everyone.
Great, thanks, Ali. Okay, three-year candidate for select board. We have 2 open seats and 2 people running. The first person on my list here is Mary Erdei. I believe that might be the right pronunciation, but if it's not, Mary, please correct me. Go
Absolutely
ahead.
right. You're absolutely right, Chuck. That's correct. My name is Mary Erdei. I'm from Wilder and I'm running for the Hartford Select Board. And I would like to apologize in advance, as probably Ally is alluding to. Several of us were on a candidate forum about 10 days ago. So if there are people here tonight who are listening, who are there, you might hear some of the same things. As we all know, anybody who's running for school board, select board, some of these offices, they care about their community. And for me, and for many of us, our experiences and our values are what we bring to a select board or a school board. I wanted to give you an idea about my experiences and values, and the biggest influencers in my life have been being a teacher for almost 30 years, as well as my belief in volunteerism. I was lucky to have worked in many different school systems, public, private, parochial, and experiential. And it encompassed 5th grade through college classes. I also was a Peace Corps volunteer in the US Trust Territories of Micronesia. I place great value in learning from experiences and in patience. And I have a little narrative I wanted to share with you that shows this. A little over 10 years ago, I began working with an anger management class in a special high school program. On the first day of class, I had to ask a 19-year-old girl to put her cell phone down because she was engaged more in the phone than she was in the class. It took her a matter of seconds before she dropped the F-bomb on me. She threw her books on the floor and at me, and she stomped off and slammed the door behind me. This was in a matter of seconds, and I had known this girl for less than 5 minutes. And on my way home on Interstate 91 that day, I had to think about this, and I recognized that this was a unique experience for me, but those kinds of confrontations would probably be almost daily. And so I had to kind of confront, well, what am I going to do about this? Am I going to quit, or am I going to learn something from this? And I decided by the time I got home that young woman who screamed at me deserved every chance at an education like any other student in a school did. And so, you can't blame her home experiences for everything. You have to work with what you have. And so one of the things I came away with was that since this was a unique experience, I was going to have to learn something. And this was a different educational situation than I had ever been in before. So in caring about your vote, I am no different than any of the other members that are talking with you tonight. What we all value is a chance to be heard. And that is what we're doing when the public confronts us and they talk about what their issues are that are important to them. And this interaction is called representation.
You've got about 30 seconds, Mary.
Okay. I, in turn, want to find ways to work with fellow select board members to affect the kinds of changes that will move our towns forward, and that at the same time maintain the culture of Vermont and New England that we are so proud of. And Ally has mentioned most of the ideas, issues that we're all concerned with. And I hope that I can do my best to do my best for the community. Thank you for listening.
Great, thanks, Mary. Okay, our next position is a 1 year remaining in a 5-year term on the West Hartford Library Board. And we have with us Laura Brooks. Laura, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're great.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to introduce myself very quickly. I have one year left on the 5-year term on the Board of Trustees for the West Hartford Library. I've already been participating in the role as an interim spot. We moved to Vermont in the end of 2020 with our 5 young kids from the South Shore of Boston. And we've been here and loving life in Vermont ever since. When we were looking to buy our house, we were really excited to see that we were so close to the West Hartford Library. And we've been spending an awful lot of time down there using the community center and taking out books and things like that. We've always loved the library. My house is full of books. And that's pretty much it. We're just really looking forward to participating in town life and making the library a great spot for everyone. Thank
Great,
you.
Laura. Thanks very much. Okay, we have 2 candidates who are running for 2 seats, 2 5-year seats on the West Hartford Library Board. I don't see either of them here. They are Douglas Eisler and Veronica Golden. If you are here and I didn't see you, please virtually raise your hand and we can get you onto the panel here.
Veronica did send regrets. She wouldn't be able to.
Okay, so we won't have Veronica. So,
But sorry, Chuck, Douglas was emailing, he was in that first round of getting kicked off. He may not have known to sign back on. I'm going to email him real quick.
all right, why don't you go ahead and do that, Kim? And if he joins, then I'll give him a 4-minute slot when he can join us. Okay, so we're going to move into the Q&A section tonight.
Kim.
Oh.
I think Kim needs this.
Oh my goodness, Kim, I am so sorry. I should have called on you right after Mary. My apologies. I moved through too quickly. So Kim, go ahead. You've got your 4-minute time. Take it away. And unmute. Looks like you're. Can we unmute Kim on our end?
Oh, here I am. I'm sorry. I was
there we
trying
go.
to, if Dan or Tracy, because I think they also received that email from Douglas, if they could reach out to him and just ask him if he could try to log on again. It might be too late, but that would be helpful. So I won't have to take the time now. Otherwise, I'll do it after. Okay.
Great, thank you.
So, sorry about that. My name is Kim Souza, and I'm running for re-election for a 3-year seat on the Hartford Select Board in this March 1st local election. And when I first ran for election in 2018, I indicated that it was not because I thought I could do the job better than any other candidate, but that I felt a sense of dedication and care for the town of Hartford at a time when my work and family life was conducive to me doing my part. And since then, I've certainly learned so much about many, many layers of local leadership and have come to realize that I actually really enjoy this work, from the smallest little details to the broadest scopes of impact and all the stuff in between. And while I genuinely value circulating fresh perspectives onto the select board, I think the experience I've gained in the past 4 years can help benefit the town's ability to move forward through often complicated processes. I have no political aspirations beyond Hartford Select Board. Basically, I'll serve this community in this way as long as it's useful, and then serve this community in other ways when it's not. Lately, when I think about the sacrifices and the perseverance of folks in education and healthcare, our public safety departments and mental health agencies over the past 2 years, it seems like the very least that I can offer as a service to our community is to contribute this significant amount of time and energy required to help guide our municipality in its necessary and often kind of challenging decisions. As some of you know, I consider myself to be quite invested in the town of Hartford. In addition to opening an independent small business in downtown White River Junction 20 years ago in June, and raising my child within the Hartford School District. In late 2020, I helped form an LLC to purchase the 5-unit rental property in Hartford Village, where I had been a tenant for 12 years. I still live in the same apartment right here, and it's just to say I'm here to stay. And my goals since first being elected in 2018 haven't changed dramatically. I try to encourage our town to consider every decision and action through a lens of equity, affordability, sustainability. But what has changed since then is that Hartford has transitioned through 4 town managers, of course, navigated or still navigating an ongoing pandemic, labor shortage, supply chain interruption, dramatic increase in materials costs, among other things, and our ability to just be able to forge ahead with objectives that seem clear and with consensus have been foiled or postponed by one obstacle after another. I mean, these are not, maybe they are excuses, but they're challenges. And fortunately, I think our new town manager, my fellow select board members, and myself are not deterred by these obstacles. It's our obligation and it's our privilege to meet each challenge, consider the best path forward, and to work with the resources available to us to overcome each one.
Okay, Kim, about 30 seconds. Oh, great.
I'm good.
So sorry I overlooked you there as I went down the list. So just for folks who are at home, Kim and Mary are the 2 candidates running for the 2 seats, 3-year term on the select board. So my apologies for muffing that part of the agenda. Okay, I'm looking for Douglas here, not seeing him. If he does show up, I'll try to get him on here and give him a chance to speak. So we're going to move into the Q&A now. So we can take questions here for any one of the candidates and also related to the budgets for the school and the town. So as before, introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and direct your question to one of the 3, or I can help do that if needed. But it's kind of open here. We can talk about budgets, we can talk to candidates, and we can have a chance to sort of get into a few issues here. So I'm looking for some hands up, and I think I have my first one. So I've got Kathy Geiger. Kathy, go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kathy Geiger, resident of West Hartford. We arrived here 20 years ago when my daughter was 1, and she's in college now, so we've been here a while. And I'm really curious. This is particularly to Nancy and Peter, who are applying for the school board. As you know, nationally, there have been a lot of weird issues evolving around curriculum. And I was wondering if you could speak to the topic of any concern we might have in the town of Hartford of a school board thinking about modifying or augmenting school curriculum due to national pressures.
Okay, great. Peter, why don't you take a first crack at it?
Certainly. So one of the joys of being on the school board is that the school board position is a non-party position, i.e. you're not representing the Democratic Party, you're not representing the Republican Party, you're not representing the Libertarians, you're not representing the Progressives. Go down what the list is. You're representing the town as a whole. And I say we're fortunate because in some ways I believe this insulates us from exactly the kinds of pressures you have brought up. I am quite sure that there are members of the community who feel very strongly in one way or another on this issue and who would like to address it, but nobody's ever brought it to the school board itself. And the school board is more than happy to leave things alone as long as we can, particularly since curriculum development is not part of our purview. We don't do curriculum development. The form of governance we do is we send specific expectations for what the school will produce in the way of an educated student through policy. And then we ask the superintendent to execute against that. And we don't interfere unless it appears that the execution that the superintendent is doing isn't going where we want the superintendent to go. And fortunately, Tom DeBalzi has always been right on the money, and we have never had to have a difficult and unpleasant conversation about the goals are X and you're doing Y. So to answer these issues, while they certainly have made the front pages of the national media and been the conversation of much of the different kinds of web conversations that are out there, have not affected, at least directly, the school board or the school district.
Great, thanks, Peter. Nancy, do you want to speak to Kathy's question?
I think Peter pretty well covered it. As he said, curriculum is really not a purview of what our board does. And, but we do hold Tom accountable, and we think he's done a great job working with the curriculum, with the teachers in the schools. We know there's always some objections or some concerns that people have, and what, a couple of months ago, we held a forum. Peter, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was. And we were talking about a particular curriculum, but it wasn't so much we weren't so much concerned about the curriculum as the concerns that were brought to us were because of the pandemic and having a brand new curriculum. So it wasn't the curriculum itself, and we as a school board wanted to give everyone a chance to come out and talk about it and do it in a dignified manner. And that's exactly what we did. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nancy. Okay, I'm waiting for my next questioner here. Okay, Jeff Arnold, go ahead and unmute and take it away.
This question is for both of you. How do you assess the students' success year over year in the high school?
All right, great. Why don't we switch order? Nancy, you want to take that one first? No, she doesn't. Okay, Peter.
So that's an extraordinarily difficult thing to do for a lot of reasons. It has to be understood that each class is made up of individuals, and those individuals vary greatly in their ability and interest and involvement and all of their home. And so given that, it's very hard to do a 1 year you did well, the next year you did badly kind of conversation that's meaningful. That said, there is a number of different kinds of standardized testings which are being utilized by the school, some at the requirement of the state and some at the interest of the school administration, to evaluate the students to figure out where they are academically and to attempt to both judge the ability of the school to teach and to assess the needs of the pupils for additional education in one area or another, and so forth. So there's a process in place which does a lot of assessment of the students. And I can tell you, based on what my daughter brings home, not always with the joy and happiness of the students who have to take a certain number of standardized tests.
Great, thanks, Peter. Nancy, you know, take a crack at
Sure.
it?
Now I'll add to it. One of the things that, because we as a board don't do, as Peter said, we don't do the, we don't do those testings with, the school personnel does that, the teachers and the administration take care of that part of the testing. We are made aware of what's happening. And if there is a real deep concern, then we as a board feel we need to address, then we would do so. Also, because of the pandemic, we've had to change some of the way that we evaluate how the kids are doing, because there's just been so many mental health issues. And so we really the schools, the administrators and the teachers have really placed the mental health and of the kids a little bit now. I hate to say it like this, but above the academics, because there is such a great need, and it's really very important because these kids cannot learn if their mental health is not where it needs to be. So that has to be a great concern for us. We have a great concern for the kids that have some other problems that might be going on at home, and it's causing them to have some problems at school. They don't have the home life that most of our kids do, and it's really hard for them to study. It's hard for them to take tests. We've got kids that I know for a fact that I know a couple of the kids at the high school that are given, their tests are given to them verbally because it's so difficult for them to be able to do it on a paper, or in most of the cases now is on their tablets. And so I think we've done a really good job of figuring out where that testing needs to go other than just the academics. Thanks.
Thanks, Nancy. Okay. What's that? Yeah. So our next question, Lanny, you're on the line here. Go ahead. And
yes, thank you, Chuck. My question is for Rocket and Mary. I've had the pleasure of serving on the board with both Kim and Allie, so if they wanted to, they could answer it as well. But Rocket and Mary, it's no secret that in the town of Hartford, we've lost our deputy chief of police, and we're down a chief of police, now a deputy chief of police, and we have a captain's role to fill within the police department. So my biggest question, I think it's a lot to fill within the town of Hartford for roles, but my question to you folks is, what do you see as the role of policing for the town of Hartford in the future?
great. Thanks, Lanny, for that question. Mary, you want to take it away first?
Sure. I think that, first of all, I think it's a rough place that Hartford's in, losing some of its leadership and its police officers. I think that also this, again, is not unusual in a lot of towns. There seems to be a loss of jobs, a loss of confidence. And I know a friend of mine whose own son was overlooked in the situation for hiring in Barry. And he was disappointed. But when the decision was made and afterwards he talked to the powers that be, he discovered that one of the things that the town wanted was someone different with a different perspective, someone not from the town itself. And I think what we have to do is exactly what Tracy is doing. She's trying to formulate a way of moving a bunch of people and their ideas, their issues, forming a committee to look at how we move forward, both on a national level of trying to get the best possible fit for Hartford. I don't see that. Someone asked me last summer about what my feelings were about defunding the police. And I said, I don't think the majority of people use the term well, because I don't think a majority of people are saying they don't want police. I think that what they want is they want both, if you want to call it law and order, rule of law, etc. But they also want people to look at the emotional issues and the mental issues that that's taking up the time of our police force. So at this point in time, I think the town moves forward to try and replace the people that they can and move to find the best people for our police force.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Rocket, you want to take a turn to answer Lanny's question?
I would love to. Thank you for the chance. And Lanny, thanks for the question. Um, I know this is like a huge issue in town, and I've been doing as deep of a dive as I can the last couple of weeks here. I actually had lunch today with Bob Cormier, Robert Cormier. I don't know quite how you pronounce his last name. Today we had lunch at Four Aces, which is great. And it actually really helped me understand a little bit more of the nuances happening in the department. I understand so I just want to say upfront, I have a huge respect. I have a huge respect for law enforcement and for really anything in public service, which is partly why I'm doing this. But firefighters, law enforcement, I think I am not at all for, I'm strongly against defund the police initiatives. I think maybe, I think Mary has a great point. Rutland, actually, one of my great mentors led Project Vision in Rutland, Vermont. And there was a really interesting initiative to find ways to serve the community, to free up resources, law enforcement resources, by utilizing partnerships with social services for nonviolent calls. So I think there's really great opportunities to do something like that, both for resource allocation, but also just for supporting the police department. But I would say, broadly speaking, I mean, what the difficult thing is, you know, firefighters have an incredible reputation always because they're always the hero. And I think with law enforcement, the problem is that a few horrible cops nationally have kind of created this horrible problem for cops everywhere. And my experience personally with cops has always been positive. And I think that it's a very difficult, thankless job that oftentimes, how would I put it? Like being an Asian guy, if someone else were to have a negative impression of Asian people because of specific incidents they've had, and then they want to apply that bias to me, I would feel like that was an unfair characterization. And I feel like that's happened a lot with cops in general. And so I don't share that view. I'm very supportive of law enforcement, very grateful for it. I have a lot of questions about the police chief position. I don't think I know the town well enough in the decision-making process to really say with a final judgment, here's how I feel. I've heard nothing but great things about Brad Vail. I've not been able to speak to him yet, but I do think that it is a fair question to say, here is someone who has served in the force for a long time, who is a deputy chief, who is good enough for another community. And I think that's a very fair question to say, why was this person not looked over? I think Mary brings up a good point about if you're trying to create cultural changes. But what I've heard about that is that Hartford Police had some difficulty in the past, and actually that Chief Caston, again, someone else who people have glowing comments about, did a lot of great positive work in terms of creating a new culture within the department, which my understanding exists today. So if there's not a need for cultural shift, you know, I share a lot of the questions. I don't have any judgment on that, but I'm supportive.
Great. Thanks, Rocket. Okay, next question we have FX Flynn. FX, go ahead and unmute. Take it away.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Chuck. And I guess I would just like to pose a question to the candidates for Select Board, but I want to introduce the question by observing that Hartford is really pretty wonderful in a lot of ways. And one of the ways is that it is Vermont in microcosm. I mean, you know, Vermont has a couple of small cities, and we've got the Brooklyn of Vermont in White River Junction. A tip of the cap to Kim Souza for helping to kick that off by opening Revolution. You know, we've got suburbs like Milton up in Wilder. We've got very traditional rural small villages surrounded by farmland in West Hartford, and we've got our own resort community in Quechee. And so and then our school district is encompassed by our borders, which is extremely rare in the state of Vermont. But we're all here together, and yeah, we've done some marvelous things. We did a decade before people started to realize that policing needed to have a social services component. Hartford had a police department with a social services component, and we've been leading the way. So it's a really good opportunity for somebody to come in, maybe who is younger and wants to show their stuff. And that is true about so many things in Hartford. One of the things that I have gotten increasingly concerned about during the last 2 years, watching what happened during the pandemic, is that I think in the pandemic, we're seeing the first signs of what is going to happen when it becomes apparent that that there are significant climate changes that are going to cause people to think about moving to a more amenable place. And like it or not, our part of New England is going to come to be seen as a better and safer place to be. And I'm quite concerned that 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at a population that is growing without limitation. And that 25 years from now, we're going to turn around and we're going to say, why during the 2020s did we not do X, Y, and Z? So my question for the select board candidates is, what one or two things might we start thinking about paying attention to now that will ease the inevitable crisis of a significant increase in population due to climate change over the course of the next generation?
Great, FX, thanks for that. So the question is to our candidates for the select board. And why don't we start off with our two members who are on the board at the moment? Kim, do you want to start off with a few words about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think this, I think we were referring to it a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, as like climate refugees, when we were thinking of people, and referencing all of the apocalypse movies that use Vermont as the green zone, that basically, as conditions get more harsh, Vermont becomes a more desirable location. Now, since pandemic, of course, we're looking at the influx of affluent people coming to increase the housing market values and rising up of the market. And one thing, both Ali and I met this afternoon with Eric Krause and talking about the climate action plan in general. And one thing that I mentioned, I have said 25 times in session, but haven't actually managed to make any movement on, which I am making a pledge to move forward on, is reinstating the impact fees that were recessed a few years ago, I think maybe 2016 or 2017, in a way that is incentivized so that any new development that is proposed, I mean, we were in need of development. We've had a really significant surge in development, and which has been beneficial for the town. But I think now we're at a place where we need to just sort of reflect and pause on what is the healthiest development for the town. And so just one little tiny piece of that being impact fees that they might start kind of high, but with incentives, including affordability, accessibility, energy efficiency, different layers that would be like, if this is an ideal development in our town, whether it's commercial or residential, like that there could be, actually, I'm not sure that impact fees would apply to residential, but in any case, for development, that the more of this criteria that we can include to continue healthy development, it would be more accessible to developers.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, Ali, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, sure. And FX, thanks so much for this very deep existential question. So, I mean, I think a lot, of course, about what we've already established with our climate action plan. And again, just really holding account that incredible tool that the Climate Advisory Committee has developed, and that the Climate Action Steering Team now is kind of helping us think through and implement. And just a plug for tomorrow's Select Board meeting, if you're curious as to sort of where we are with the Climate Action Plan, I would definitely make sure to attend tomorrow's Select Board meeting, because I think our Dana, our environmental sustainability coordinator, and some members of the Climate Action Steering Team will be kind of talking through a first draft of an implementation plan. How is this actually going to happen? And something also, just to reference the conversation that Kim and I had with Eric Kraus, formerly the chair of the Climate Advisory Committee, is this idea of mitigation and versus adaptation. And how both of those things, Eric was explaining how we need both of those things. So mitigation being, how can we cut down on carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, but then also how are we adapting? So to your question, FX, if we know that we are maybe going to be experiencing an influx of climate refugees, as we might be calling them, how do we need to be nimble and ready to adapt when that happens? So being able to kind of hold both of those things in our planning and in our action. And then the other thing, of course, that it's always top of mind that your question makes me think of is we can't talk about this without talking about affordable housing. So if we're going to have an influx of folks coming in who are looking at this as sort of a climate, again, in that kind of climate refugee sort of scenario, we already have an estimated like 10,000 units, housing unit shortage in the Upper Valley. That we basically need to create the housing for in order to have enough housing for folks by 2030. And that's before we experience what you're describing, FX. So I also just want to make folks aware, Michael Redmond, the executive director of the Haven, informed me recently that we should be looking out for what are called VRAP funds, which are the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program funds. Those are coming down the pike, coming to the state of Vermont in the amount of $352 million as expected. And so he was really advising if there are affordable housing projects that Hartford wants to jump on, those funds last until 2025. It's an incredible opportunity for the town. So just to really be paying attention to what's coming down at the state level and being ready to really act on it. And, again, in partnership with our wonderful planning department to make some of these necessary changes happen.
Great, thanks, Allie. Rocket, do you want to speak to FX's question?
Absolutely. I'll start off by saying I am very passionate about climate and the environment. However, with respect to Vermont, I'm always mixed because the US represents probably 10 to 14% of global greenhouse emissions. And then Vermont is obviously maximum 2%, if not even a smaller fraction of that. So the question is sort of what is the best way to use the resources we have to create the maximum ROI and return for the people of Vermont. One concern I have, and I think this kind of goes to the heart of it, is as people come to Vermont, drive up the pricing of the housing market and make it increasingly expensive or unaffordable to live here, what happens to legacy Vermonters? Like what happens to the people who have been here for many, many generations? I mean, I dated a girl once who was her family was here from the French and Indian Wars, like really, really old time Vermonters. And I know there's a huge gap oftentimes in these two populations, not just politically in perspective, but also economically. And so I wonder for myself, I think the heart of what I am really passionate about is economic resiliency. So I think that goes with local power production, local food production, and strong local economy, because I think the idea is that you really want to have as affordable of a place to live, which does definitely include affordable housing. It also includes, frankly, I think transferring some of the tax burden off of property owners to maybe more of like a consumption style tax, people who visit, because there are 50 visitors to every Vermont resident on any given year. So how can you do that and foster an environment that's really robust for small businesses to start and also to thrive? I think White River Junction in the last 15 years, as you mentioned, with Revolution and all these great restaurants that are in town, are a great example of that and sort of the seed of what not just White River and Hartford could be, but Vermont could be. So that's sort of where I'm really passionate. I'm very involved in local food on the statewide level and trying to figure out systems that would create resiliency so that it's affordable for people who are already here. And I think that's really, really crucial, because when you create it so it's priced out, so people actually have to retire out of state even though they don't want to. And this is something that happens a lot with local, like Vermont born and raised people. I think that's super unfortunate, and I hate to see that happen. So my passion is really sort of, I'm very passionate about how do you make it a system that is able to hold all people here and keep things
Great.
affordable.
Thanks, Rocket. Mary, do you want to have a chance to speak to FX's question?
Sure. Thank you, FX. I've heard some of this before from you. I don't have a lot of new things to add. I think what Kim and Ally and Rocket have said addresses a lot of the issues that we think about. And I think that being prepared and starting now to think about these things or move in that direction is real important. You know, too often this area in the past has loved to have people come up, but only on a seasonal basis. You know, tourism, it's always been a big thing. Skiing industry in the wintertime, and camps in the summertime, and artistic endeavors. And we're lucky to be able to live here all year long. But I think that there's also something to be said, depending on, you know, the climate refugees, what they bring to the area. Of course, we've got to worry about, are we going to maintain affordability in housing? But also there's a concern about, I mean, this is across the state of Vermont, that we have an older population. We do need younger families to come. And some of them are really great, and they care a great deal about the rural environment. So I think, you know, the biggest factor is that we think in advance, we, you know, create some options, and we have this chance to study it. But I certainly can't say with any kind of certainty that, you know, that there's going to be 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people moving here. We're also going to get climate change means a lot more rain, a lot more moisture, a lot more problems, and less winter. So that brings its own problems with it as well. So I'm not sure it's easy to just state that this is going to happen. I think, you know, not that we wait and see, but we make plans and then we adjust as we go.
Great, thanks, Mary. I've got a couple more questions queued up here. Just to alert folks, we've got 63 people in the meeting at the moment, another half hour to go. We often do this in a little bit more of a rapid fire fashion, but there haven't been many hands raised. So I've been letting people speak longer than usual. So if you're out there and you have a question, definitely get your hand up so that I know that you're out there, because otherwise I'll continue with a more relaxed format. So next question from Peter Merrill. Peter, go ahead and ask away.
This question isn't actually from me. A gentleman named Stephen Richard, who lives in Wilder, sent an email to the school board because he wasn't able to get into the meeting after we got kicked out the first time. And the answer to this is probably going to need Tom DeBalzi to be admitted to the panel. I believe he's in the audience, and if you could promote him. So the question basically, to paraphrase it, was, what was the previous insurance claim on the roofs based on? Then, and has a claim been filed against the architects and or members of the design team for their faulty design? My point is that the people who provided this faulty design on these roofs should be held accountable, not the Hartford taxpayers. Since I know little about what was done with regarding the roofs, and I think Tom has done some research on that, Tom may be able to answer what was the basis for the claim and how it went forward.
Great. Tom, you're on.
Okay, I don't have all the particulars because it was before my tenure here. It was way back Coach may remember, but it was shortly after the two buildings were completed by the same architectural and construction and engineering firms back in 1993 and 4. So that was well before my tenure here. I didn't begin till 2011, but they were sued by the Hartford School Board, and we were successful. And I don't know exactly how much money was recovered or won in that court case, but it was a lawsuit. It wasn't just an insurance settlement. And that money was used for other repairs. At the time, the roofs didn't need to be immediately torn off and replaced. So it made a lot of sense to use that money, or they could have put that in a reserve account for the eventual repair. But that money was secured in the lawsuit, and so that settlement is long past and over. So I don't see where the Hartford taxpayers now have the 30 years of the roof life, which is somewhat normal, and the roofs need to be repaired. There are leaks at both buildings. I'll be happy to talk more about it. I don't know how much detail you want me to get in here. I also have all the records in our files from that lawsuit, so I could give you the exact amounts and the particulars.
Okay, great.
As the person who proximally asked the question, I think you've answered well enough.
Great. Yep. Thanks, Peter and Tom. Okay, next question I have is from Kathy Melichik. Kathy, go ahead, unmute and ask away.
Hi, this is Kathy Melisick. Chuck, that was so close.
I was in the ballpark.
It was awesome, though. This is Kathy Melisick from Wilder, Vermont. And I have a question for the select board candidates who are using the term climate refugee. I would like them to clarify how they define that term. The word refugee is increasingly being used as kind of a euphemism, as with COVID refugees, which in Vermont has largely meant wealthy people moving into the state and pushing up property costs. So when I hear climate refugee, and as far as it's being used as part of a campaign, I would like them to please define how they see that term. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kathy. We can do kind of a quick round here. Let's roll right around through the group again. Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
I'd love to address that. And Kathy, thank you for mentioning, because even when I said it in the context of how it was presented way pre-pandemic, and then I heard it used a few more times, I realized it was, anyway, it's probably not a great term overall, but it had come up, that term had been used back pre-pandemic when Selectboard was discussing things like just with harsh conditions, rising temperatures in rising sea levels, that it was likely that we should be prepared to expect an influx of people coming to the region from places, fleeing less desirable locations, not simply as a choice for a more comfortable lifestyle, but because of conditions that climate change was contributing to. So I do apologize if then that kind of got flipped around. I was only referencing it to that time frame. And then, I mean, not that it couldn't still happen, because temperatures are still rising, water levels are still rising. Like that influx of people fleeing to other areas out of desperation or necessity could still be the case, but it is absolutely not how I'm characterizing folks who are buying a second home or just coming in and paying cash for an expensive home in Vermont or in Hartford. I hope that helps.
Great, thanks, Kim. Allie, go ahead and yeah.
Sure, yeah, Kathy, thanks for that question and for being really aware of language and how we use language, because it matters. I don't have much to add beyond what Kim has shared. I think I define it, similarly, and the idea that it's kind of that mass scale movement of folks in kind of emergency situations, not, as Kim was expressing, oh, it's a little hot and so I want to move. Like there's a difference there. And so, but, to your point, Kathy, being really clear about when we're using that term, using it accurately. And I think when I think of that term and climate refugee, I'm certainly thinking of folks who maybe are really experiencing literally on, geographic margins often the time, in terms of, experiencing really deadly disasters, high amounts of hurricanes, tsunamis, rising water levels, things that, again, are just really pressing and emergent for folks to need to, really make a really kind of drastic choice and kind of that large scale movement. So thanks again for that question. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Hallie. Rocket.
I'm not sure that I ever use that term. I probably use it colloquially because it's the term I hear. I guess if I had to interpret it, I would probably put interpret that idea of a refugee as someone who's taking refuge. So I'm thinking like people who live in areas that are like genuinely being totally flooded or becoming unlivable and therefore having to take refuge from a harsh climate. Of course, if you think that's going to happen to like, I don't know, a single family, it's going to happen to everyone in a region. So I'm not really sure that's actually happened yet in the US. But yeah, I'm not sure that I actually use it that much, to be honest.
Great, thanks, Rocket. Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we use terms too loosely at times, and I would agree with Rocket that climate refugee to me is someone who, like an actual refugee from a war-torn country, has to leave because their life is in danger. And again, I also would agree with Rocket that I don't think it has begun, because from all indications, even though the sea level has risen, like down in Florida, people are still buying homes on the water and apartments and high rises right there where it floods the streets. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be worried about it, but I'm just saying it is the great exodus has not begun yet, and hopefully we will be working on, changes to our policies that will promote slowing down climate change.
Great. Okay, thanks, Mary. Next question, Jeff Arnold. Jeff, you're back. Go ahead.
Thanks. I have one question for the school board and a couple questions for the town. The school board one is, since Tom started in 2011 to now, I think we've had about a $10 million increase in the budget, yet the number of students have gone down 200. So can you explain why costs have increased that much while students have decreased that much? And for the town.
Oh, that's okay, Jeff, hold it right there. Let's give Tom a chance to answer that one. Or Peter. Yeah, Peter,
wasn't sure if it was addressed to Tom or the school board. One of the major issues, quite frankly, was delayed maintenance. When I took the position, we had just completed a outside consulting firm's evaluation of the entire school district's infrastructure. It was estimated at that time that it was going to cost $30 million to fix the infrastructure. Part of what you are seeing in the increase is due to the fact that those costs have been built into our budgets. We have been issuing bonds, doing construction work, paying off those bonds. Additionally, the needs of the community have changed. The kinds of social disruptions and problems that our students are having to face have made the institution need to provide lots and lots of ancillary care to our students in addition to the learning that they are receiving to enable them to learn. All sorts of kinds of mental and other kinds of counseling, food programs that Nancy has been involved in. All of these things are needed to be done. Part of it is just the cost of healthcare. Guess what? Healthcare has gone up faster than the rate of inflation. That is one of the most important aspects with respect to why our budgets have gone up over the last number of years. It wasn't helped that the state, in an attempt to try to drive down the cost of healthcare, got rid of what was actually one of the cheaper and most affordable and best plans available for teachers and forced everybody to go through the state. So there are any number of issues that in total, combined with the fact that inflation is a fact of life, even though it's been a relatively low rate until now, have resulted in, over a period of time, the costs associated with running a school going up.
Great, thanks, Peter. Jeff, go ahead and keep your hand up and I'll come back to you. I've got another questioner, but I'll continue to keep you in the queue here. So our next question is from Heidi Duto. Heidi, go ahead. You're back with us.
Hi, Chuck. Thank you very much. My name is Heidi Duto from White River Junction. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're all set. Great.
Thank you. This question is for Mary Erdei. Next summer, we are planning on doing a renovation to the South Main Street parking lot, and we are planning on doing construction to the North Main Street road. How, if you are elected to the select board, how can you prepare parking in downtown White River?
Great, Heidi, we have your question. Yeah, Mary, go ahead. That was directed to you.
Really, I'd have to be a part of the committee and learn as much as I could about it. I really don't feel that, since I am not on the board and I don't have the background information at this point in time. And I do know that parking is an issue because I've talked with many people who live downtown and can't find parking. But again, I need more information in order to evaluate and in order to make an educated decision along with other people.
Great, thanks, Mary. Not to put anybody else on the spot, anybody on the select board wish to talk a bit about these capital projects? Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Well, I know it was presented where, I mean, it is going to be an issue. There's no question about it. It will limit parking further during the construction period. There's no avoiding that entirely. I know that for the parking lot, South Main Street parking lot project, they will be doing it in phases so that at least the entire parking lot will not be shut down at the same time. So they'll do half the parking lot, half will be available for use of parking, and then vice versa. And it's South Main Street, not North Main Street, for the phase 2 of that big TIF project that's going on. And again, I mean, I think that the public works, the contractors, the engineers, will do the best they can, but it is going to impact downtown traffic and parking for a number of months. And, we had some issues with that with the phase 1 of the South Main Street project. I wondered at one point if my business would survive the replacing of the underpass gates at Bridge Street and the building of Bridge and Main, but we basically have to be adaptable as both consumers and residents and businesses. We basically, this is infrastructure that is much of it is funded through TIF programs and TIF projects that our planning department has really worked hard to achieve for us. So yeah, it's going to be hard and we're going to have to get through it.
Great, thanks, Kim. I don't have any other questions pending at the moment. Tracy or anybody else, if you want to speak to that, just go ahead and unmute. Otherwise, I'll go back and see if I can find Jeff Arnold again to keep us going. Okay, Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, Kim is really right. I mean, infrastructure projects are going to be disruptive. Whether that's you rebuilding your porch on your personal house, all the way to us digging up a huge section of the street to deal with infrastructure in there. But we got to do the work, and we're going to do everything in our power. And I know Hannah Tyler spoke on this at a board meeting a couple of weeks ago to increase our communications, increase our ability to let people know what's happening. And we are getting ready. I think tomorrow night we're going to award the bid to the contractor. So that's already out and about. But once that's really signed, sealed, and delivered, we're going to be reaching out to all of those community partners that might have a few parking spaces and saying, hey, summer of 2022, are you willing to let some folks park in your parking lot when you don't need it? So that way we can keep people out and about in downtown White River Junction.
Great, thanks, Tracy. Okay, Jeff, you had mentioned having a question or two for the select board members. Go ahead and unmute and take it away.
All right, thanks. Jeff Arnold from Wilder. Can you tell me, I think Tracy, or if the accountant is on this call, what is the current payroll and benefits? And then what is the increase going to be once the, what is the increase of the 10 positions going to be in payroll and benefits? And also I'd like to know if marijuana, if a marijuana shop opens up, would the sale of it go into the lot fund, local option?
Okay, thanks, Jeff. A couple things about that. So on Saturday, we're going to have plenty of time. On the ballot will be this question of whether the town should allow retail cannabis in town. So great time to talk about that is on Saturday. And as we talked about at our first Monday meeting for this town meeting cycle, the local option tax is not related to that. So those are independent. The lot won't be collecting money from cannabis, at least as things are currently configured. So anyway, but that's a good public service announcement for Saturday's meeting that cannabis is on the ballot for Tuesday, and Saturday would be a great time to ask questions about that. Okay, and then back to your first question, Tracy or anybody from the select board, do you want to take a stab at that, or do you want to prepare numbers for Saturday, or because that might be a complicated answer?
I see Kim has her hand up. Kim, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate, Tracy was asked that question earlier this evening, and it's not something that any of us have readily available. The finance director is on, but I don't think it's, I mean, unless Gail raises her hand, I would say it's not really her job to answer that tonight during candidates meeting. And I will tell you, like, one of the things that with just having like a total payroll, including benefits amount, is something I would really like too. I mean, we work with the town uses Mooney Smart, and the way that things are broken up, it's really difficult to just look at what is our total overall payroll amount. So, I mean, I think it is something that would be useful to have for future reference, but I don't think any of us have it here tonight to give to you, Jeff.
All right, that sounds great. It may come up on Saturday, so forewarned. That may be coming back. Okay, I've got a hand up here. Yeah, Allie, you had a comment you wanted to make. Go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly, I also don't have all of those numbers and calculations available, but do want to just direct folks, since that question has come up a couple of times. It's very kind of laid out all the different staff positions or proposed staff positions in the January 17th agenda packet. So if you're just really looking for, what are all of those positions, what are the, proposed salaries, et cetera, on the January 17th agenda is the place to look for that.
Great, that sounds good. And maybe someone from the board could bring that, because it's a little bit hard sometimes for people to dig out and find that information. So it seems like that's been a hot topic tonight. So it'd be nice to have some of those figures for Saturday. That would be great. Jeff, you are also the only guy with your hand up, so I'll give you another bite at the apple here. Go for it.
No, I'm just surprised that since this is budget night, it's not just candidates night, that something as basic as what we're paying, which is usually about 80 or 85% of the budget, and you don't know what the number for that. And the other question I had, why wasn't a search started earlier for a chief? Because he left last year around the same time that Tracy started. Thanks.
Okay, Jeff, a couple things. So I think your question has been noted, and the board is thinking about that. So hopefully we'll have some figures available on Saturday, and we can talk about the chief on Saturday too. We're getting here close to the end of our time, and since that's not directly related to budgeting candidates, we'll hold on that. We do have Gail has raised her hand, our finance director. Gail, go ahead and take it away if you have a comment or something you want to say.
Hi, Chuck. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're all set. Go ahead, Gail.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what Jeff's question was. Jeff, are you looking for the total number for the total number of employees and their salary and their benefits? Or are you just looking for the new additions for the employees?
I think, Gail, I'll just paraphrase. I think that ideally he would love both. It'd be great to know what the current status is and what the new proposals might be, if that's possible.
Okay, I can take on the total employees and for the salaries and benefits. As far as breaking it down, I would need to get assistance from somebody else, but I certainly can have that information available for Tracy to present on Saturday or a board member.
Great, Gail, thanks so much. I think I'm seeing a lot of nodding of heads here amongst board members. So these questions have been noted. We have 56 people still participating, which is great. We've got another 5 or 6 minutes to go. I had a question there briefly from FX Flynn, although your hand has gone back down. Oh, he's back. FX, if you have a question, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, Chuck, I think I'm going to vote for you again, and I move to adjourn.
Okay. As I unfortunately mentioned, we're not using Robert's rules, so your motion is not a privilege, but it is noted in the context. Gail has her hand back up. Gail, do you have another comment, or okay, your hand has gone back down. Okay, we have a motion not on the table to adjourn. I see no more hands raised, so I will take this opportunity then to bring this meeting to a close. Special thanks to all of our candidates who have been with us here tonight and staff members who've answered questions along the way. And also a big shout out to David and Jackson and Chico who helped us work through these issues we had with AV. So those are still the bugbear. So hopefully we'll have things worked out before Saturday. So as a final wrap up, we will convene again on Saturday, 10 o'clock, unfortunately virtually. We will start again with the school district warning and then the town warning. Both of these warnings are pretty minimal because the actual voting has been moved to Tuesday, but that does give us a chance to further some of these conversations. So we can certainly talk more about budgets again on Saturday. We can also talk about some of the other issues, including the retail cannabis that will be on the ballot. The one thing we won't talk about on Saturday is there won't be direct questions for the candidates. The way town meeting formally works, you can only be on the ballot once, so to speak. And so the candidates are on Tuesday's ballot. So we won't be discussing and voting about them on Saturday. So that's the only thing we won't talk about on Saturday. But beyond that, anything that people want to bring up will be fair game. So I think that concludes our activities for this evening. I don't see anybody else in the room here waving wildly at me, which means we're probably all just about.
Chuck, I think Coach has his hand raised.
Coach, sorry about that. Go ahead. Last word goes to you.
Well, thank you. Just a quick comment. If Tracy, could you double check with the Cannabis Control Board? My understanding, is the towns in Vermont that have TIF districts will be able to utilize that 1% excise tax on their related stores.
Coach,
that's my understanding.
Let me just clarify, since we did go into this in a fair bit of detail back in January. So Hartford does not have a 1% sales tax as part of our local option tax. So yeah, not on general sales. So it wouldn't fall under us.
Okay.
But that's a great question. One that came up before that we can review.
Okay. That was the point, though. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think that covers it then, folks. Thanks very much for bearing with us. Whoops. Okay, Kim, back to you.
Thank you. No, I'm just saying good night.
Okay, good. Great. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on Saturday. Good night.